My name is Cassius Williams, 68 years old, with $33 million quietly sitting in my accounts. I never flaunted my wealth, not even to my own daughter Amanda. I wore the same watch to her $300,000 wedding that I wore to her kindergarten graduation. When Amanda called me a pathetic failure during her wedding speech, 200 shocked faces turned to me. That moment, I decided it was time to play the secret recording her mother Marie had made before cancer took her away. If you want to know what happened next, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to catch more stories of life turning on a dime. I grew up in a small town outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where my father worked at the local factory for 35 years, and my mother cleaned houses to help make ends meet. From an early age, I understood the value of every single dollar because I saw my parents work so hard for each one. By 13, I was delivering newspapers before school. At 16, I was stocking grocery shelves on weekends. We never had much, but we had enough. My parents scraped together enough for community college, and I worked 2 jobs to transfer to the state university. Those years taught me more about life than any business class could. I learned to stretch $20 for a week of groceries and developed skills in finding creative solutions to problems. More importantly, I learned that appearances meant nothing compared to character and hard work. During my junior year, I met Marie in an economics class. She came from a similar background, her father a postal worker and her mother a school secretary. We connected instantly over shared stories of working our way through school. Marie had this infectious laugh that could light up a lecture hall. She was studying accounting while I focused on business management, both of us dreaming of something better than what we had grown up with, but neither of us needing anything lavish. After graduation, I started at an electronics company in an entry-level position, while Marie joined a local accounting firm. We married in a simple ceremony in her parents' backyard, with fewer than 50 guests. Our honeymoon was a weekend at a cabin by Lake Michigan, and we thought it was perfect. Over the next decade, I worked my way up in the company, eventually becoming operations manager. When the technology boom hit, I recognized opportunities that others missed. I took a risk and left my secure position to join a startup that was developing new computer components. Many thought I was crazy, but Marie supported me completely. She understood my vision, even when I struggled to explain it to others. That startup was acquired 3 years later, giving me my first $1 million. Rather than changing our lifestyle, Marie and I made a conscious decision to continue living modestly. We moved to a slightly better neighborhood in Minneapolis, but bought a practical 3-bedroom house that cost well under what we could afford. We drove reliable, economical cars. We invested wisely and lived well below our means. When the second opportunity came around, I had enough experience and capital to become an angel investor in several promising tech companies. 3 of them succeeded beyond anything we had imagined. By my 45th birthday, our net worth had surpassed $10 million, and it continued to grow through smart investments. Throughout this time, most people had no idea of our financial situation. We specifically chose not to display our wealth. Our philosophy was simple. Money should provide security and opportunities, not status. Marie and I agreed that flaunting wealth created artificial relationships and taught the wrong values. We wanted genuine connections based on who we were, not what we owned. This decision extended to our families as well. Our parents knew we were doing well, but not the full extent. Marie always worried that money would change how people treated us. She was right. The few friends who discovered our true financial status immediately changed their behavior, some becoming uncomfortable around us, others suddenly needing loans or investment in their business ideas. As our wealth grew, our commitment to living authentically only strengthened. I still mowed my own lawn. Marie still used coupons at the grocery store. We took modest vacations, where we focused on experiences rather than luxury. The joy in our lives came from our relationship, our work, and eventually, our daughter, not from showing off what we had accumulated. When our net worth crossed $20 million, we set up significant charitable foundations that operated quietly. We funded scholarships for working-class kids like we had been, invested in community development in struggling neighborhoods, and supported medical research. These efforts gave us far more satisfaction than any mansion or sports car could have. This was the foundation upon which we built our lives, a foundation of substance over appearance, of security over display, and of values that would, we hoped, last longer than any fortune could. Amanda Noel Williams was born on a crisp autumn morning in 1988, bringing a new dimension of joy to our lives. Marie and I had waited until we felt secure in our careers before having a child, though no one could have predicted just how financially secure we would ultimately become. The day we brought Amanda home, Marie and I made a promise to each other that our daughter would grow up understanding the value of hard work and the true meaning of wealth. Our parenting philosophy was straightforward. We would provide Amanda with everything she needed and some of what she wanted, but never excess. She attended public schools where she could interact with children from all backgrounds. For birthdays and holidays, we gave thoughtful gifts rather than extravagant ones. When Amanda turned 10 and asked for a specific doll that all her friends had, we had her save half the money from her allowance. The pride on her face when she finally purchased that doll taught her more than simply receiving it would have. Our family traditions reflected our values. Sunday dinners were sacred, always home-cooked with everyone participating in preparation. Summers included 2-week camping trips to national parks, where we hiked trails and sat around campfires telling stories. During winters, we volunteered at local homeless shelters, serving meals alongside Amanda. Through these experiences, we tried to show her that happiness came from connections and experiences, not possessions. As a child, Amanda embraced these values. She was thoughtful and kind, writing thank you notes without being prompted, and often giving away toys she had outgrown to children who needed them. In elementary school, she started a small project collecting books for kids who couldn't afford them. In middle school, she babysat for neighbors and saved half her earnings for college, a practice we had suggested, but she maintained on her own. When Amanda was 12, Marie and I discussed whether our financial decisions were fair to our daughter. Were we depriving her of opportunities by not leveraging our wealth more visibly? After much reflection, we reaffirmed our choice. We had set up a trust for Amanda's education and future, but we wanted her to develop her own identity and work ethic before knowing about it. We would tell her when she graduated college, we decided, once she had established her own path. Everything changed when Amanda turned 16. Marie began experiencing persistent fatigue that she initially attributed to overwork at the accounting firm where she had become a partner. When she finally saw a doctor, the diagnosis shattered our world: advanced pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was devastating, with survival rates measured in months rather than years. Those next months redefined suffering for our family. Marie underwent aggressive treatments that ravaged her body, but provided only minimal extensions of time. Amanda, in the middle of her teenage years, watched her vibrant mother diminish before her eyes. I tried to maintain stability while balancing hospital visits, work responsibilities, and supporting both my wife and daughter through their grief. Marie approached her illness with the same practical mindset she had applied throughout our lives together. Once she understood the reality of her situation, she began preparing meticulously for a future she would not be part of. She updated her will, organized family photographs, and wrote letters for Amanda to open at significant life milestones. 6 months into her treatment, when periods of clarity became rarer, Marie shared an idea with me. She wanted to record video messages for Amanda to watch at important moments: her high school and college graduations, her wedding day, the birth of her first child. Though it broke my heart to acknowledge these realities, I helped set up the recordings in our living room during Marie's stronger days. The wedding message was the one Marie insisted on recording first. Somehow, she sensed it would be particularly important. I remember her sitting in her favorite armchair, her body thin, but her eyes still bright with the wisdom and love that had guided our family. She spoke directly to the camera, as if Amanda was right there, addressing not only our daughter but also her future spouse and even possible in-laws. She talked about our family values: the true meaning of success, and her hopes for Amanda's future. She included specific details about our financial situation, giving me permission to share that information whenever I felt it necessary. After completing each recording, Marie would say, "Keep these safe, Cassius. Give them to her only at the right moment. You will know when." I stored the digital files in multiple secure locations, treating them as the precious treasures they were. Marie passed away on a quiet spring morning, just 14 months after her diagnosis. Amanda was 17, preparing for college applications, and suddenly facing life without her mother. The funeral was simple, but well attended, with many people sharing stories of how Marie had touched their lives through quiet acts of kindness they had never forgotten. In the weeks that followed, both Amanda and I moved through our home like ghosts. The absence of Marie, a physical presence neither of us knew how to navigate. I tried to maintain our family traditions, but Sunday dinners, at an empty chair, were too painful. The camping trip that summer was canceled by unspoken mutual agreement. We were lost, each grieving separately, despite living under the same roof. Looking back, I see now that this was when the first distance between Amanda and me began to form. Without Marie as our bridge, we struggled to communicate through our grief. I threw myself into work as a distraction, perhaps not recognizing how much Amanda needed me to be present. She, in turn, spent more time with friends, finding comfort outside our home of memories. I kept Marie's recordings secure, waiting for those moments she had intended them for. I never imagined how crucial the wedding message would eventually become, or how different the circumstances of its viewing would be from anything Marie could have anticipated. The year following Marie's death passed in a fog of grief and adjustment. Amanda graduated high school with honors, though the ceremony felt hollow without Marie in the audience. I sat alone, clapping until my hands hurt when Amanda crossed the stage, trying to cheer loudly enough for two parents. That fall, Amanda left for Cornell University, having been accepted with a partial scholarship. I had offered to pay the full tuition, but she insisted on maintaining her academic scholarship, making me privately proud of her independence. We had enough money to buy apartments near campus or pay for luxurious living arrangements, but staying true to our principles, I helped her move into a standard dormitory. We agreed she would use her trust fund interest for reasonable expenses while maintaining a part-time campus job for spending money. Our weekly phone calls during that first semester remained warm and consistent. Amanda talked about her classes, her roommate challenges, and her adjustment to college life. She seemed to be coping better away from the empty space Marie had left in our home. I was grateful for her resilience while struggling with my own solitude. The subtle changes began during her sophomore year. Amanda joined a sorority where many members came from visibly wealthy families. Her calls became less frequent, and when we did speak, she talked more about weekend trips to New York City, exclusive parties, and restaurants where dinner cost more than what we would typically spend on groceries for a week. I noticed her clothing during video calls reflected designer labels I had never seen her wear before. During her winter break that year, the first real tension emerged between us. Amanda arrived home with several expensive handbags and immediately commented on how small our house seemed compared to her friends' homes. When I suggested we volunteer at the homeless shelter as we had in previous years, she created excuses, eventually admitting she found the experience depressing rather than meaningful. By junior year, Amanda had fully immersed herself in a social circle where wealth was displayed and discussed openly. Her majors in business and communications positioned her among students, aiming for high-paying careers in finance and marketing. When she came home for holidays, she frequently mentioned friends vacationing in Europe or receiving cars as gifts. I noticed her scrutinizing our home and lifestyle with new eyes, sometimes making small comments about our furniture being outdated or questioning why I still drove my 10-year-old sedan when I could afford better. I tried to engage her in conversations about values and perspective, reminding her of the principles Marie had championed. These discussions usually ended with Amanda rolling her eyes and saying, "Things are different now, Dad. Mom would have understood that times change." The summer before her senior year, Amanda accepted an internship at a prestigious marketing firm in Manhattan. Instead of coming home, she stayed in the city, sharing an apartment with sorority sisters in an upscale neighborhood. When I visited, bringing some homemade cookies Marie used to bake, I felt distinctly out of place among her new friends. They were polite but dismissive, exchanging glances when I talked about my work or mentioned practical considerations about Amanda's spending. That visit was the first time I heard Amanda introduce me differently. "This is my dad," she said to one friend, then quickly added, "He worked in business back in Minnesota," using the past tense as if I were retired or irrelevant, rather than actively managing investments worth millions. I said nothing, reminding myself that our decision to keep our wealth private had been deliberate. After graduation, Amanda accepted a position at that same marketing firm, officially relocating to New York. She found an apartment that cost nearly $4,000 in monthly rent, which she could afford thanks to her trust fund interest, though her friends likely assumed she was spending most of her entry-level salary on housing. I helped her move in, spending a weekend assembling furniture and stocking her kitchen, trying to maintain our connection despite feeling increasingly like a visitor in her life. It was at a gallery opening 6 months later that Amanda met Jeffrey Harrington III, son of a banking family with old money and older pretensions. Their courtship progressed quickly, with Amanda being absorbed into Jeffrey's social world of charity galas, weekend trips to the Hamptons, and winter skiing in Aspen. Pictures on social media showed a version of my daughter I barely recognized, draped in formal wear at events where tickets cost thousands per plate. Jeffrey came to Minnesota to meet me 3 months into their relationship. He arrived in a car service, wearing a casual outfit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Throughout the weekend, his courtesy barely masked his condescension. He asked questions about my little business ventures, while explaining his family's banking legacy. He commented on the charming simplicity of our neighborhood and suggested restaurants for dinner that would have required 2-hour drives to Minneapolis, seemingly unaware that excellent local options existed. What troubled me most was Amanda's behavior in his presence. She continuously apologized for things that needed no apology. The size of our house, the lack of guest rooms requiring Jeffrey to stay in a hotel, even the selection of coffee I offered at breakfast. She had become a translator between our worlds, always positioning herself closer to his than to her upbringing. The final evening of their visit, after Jeffrey had retired to his hotel, I attempted to have an honest conversation with Amanda about her changing values. She became immediately defensive. "You just don't understand how things work in my world now," she said, emphasizing the separate ownership of our realities. "It matters where you live, what you wear, where you vacation. These connections are how business gets done." "That may be true," I conceded, "but there's a difference between strategic networking and changing who you are fundamentally." "Maybe who I am has changed," she replied. "Maybe I want more than this." She gestured around our comfortable but modest living room. "Your mother and I wanted you to understand the value of things beyond money," I said carefully. Amanda's eyes flashed. "Mom has been gone for 6 years. You can't keep using her as a reason to stay stuck in the past." That comment stung more than she could know. I was not stuck in the past, but rather committed to principles Marie and I had built together. I wondered then if I should reveal our true financial situation, if that knowledge might bridge the growing divide between us. But something held me back. If Amanda only renewed her respect for me based on my net worth, would that not prove our concerns had been justified all along? I decided to wait, hoping that time and maturity would eventually bring her back to the values she had been raised with. I still believed my daughter was in there somewhere, beneath the glossy exterior she had constructed. I just didn't know how long it would take to reach her, or what it might ultimately require. The engagement announcement came via a professional photo shoot posted on social media. Jeffrey had proposed to Amanda in Santorini, Greece, with a diamond ring that could have funded a small business. The accompanying caption detailed how he had rented out an entire clifftop restaurant for the occasion, with a private violin quartet and chef. Within days, Amanda called to share the news officially, though it felt like an afterthought given the public announcement. "We are thinking spring at the Harrington estate in the Hamptons," she said. already deep into planning. The guest list will be around 200 people, mostly Jeffrey's family connections and our New York friends. That sounds lovely, I said, trying to match her enthusiasm. How can I help with the preparations? There was a slight pause. Well, the Harringtons have connections with all the best vendors, so that part is covered. I suppose we should talk about your contribution. The way she phrased it made clear her assumptions about my financial limitations. I decided to be direct, but vague. I want to help make your day special, Amanda. What would be meaningful to you? The rehearsal dinner would be traditional, she said cautiously, but it needs to be at Le Ciel in Southampton to coordinate with our weekend. They have a minimum spend of $20,000. I can manage the rehearsal dinner, I said simply. Are you sure, Dad? Her voice held surprise mixed with concern. If it's too much, the Harringtons said they could cover everything. I want to do this for you, I assured her, leaving unspoken that $20,000 was less than the monthly interest on just one of my investment accounts. 2 weeks later, I received a formal invitation to join Amanda and the Harringtons for an initial planning session with their wedding coordinator in New York. I flew in for the weekend, booking a modest hotel by my standards, but still one of the better options in the city. The planning meeting took place in the Harringtons' Upper East Side penthouse, a space decorated in a way that announced money without whispering taste. Beatrice Harrington, Jeffrey's mother, greeted me with air kisses and immediate commentary. Cassius, how lovely you could join us. Such a long trip for you from Minnesota. Do they have direct flights from there now? Before I could answer, William Harrington, Jeffrey's father, clasped my shoulder a bit too firmly. Good to see you again. Still driving that Toyota? Reliable cars, I hear. My gardener has one. Amanda watched these interactions with visible discomfort, jumping in to direct attention toward Veronica, the wedding planner whose services apparently started at $50,000. We have secured the estate for the last weekend in May, Veronica began, opening a leather portfolio embossed with gold. The ceremony will take place in the Rose Garden, followed by cocktails on the West Lawn, and dinner in a custom-built glass pavilion overlooking the ocean. As she continued detailing plans that included imported flowers from Holland, custom linens from Italy, and a 10-piece orchestra, I watched the easy nods from the Harringtons and Amanda's perfect imitation of their nonchalance. The estimated costs being casually approved would have funded several of my scholarships for working-class students. And Cassius will be handling the rehearsal dinner at Le Ciel, Beatrice interjected. Such a charming venue for a smaller event. Very appropriate. I nodded politely, though I had already privately arranged with the restaurant owner to upgrade several elements of the dinner beyond what Amanda had discussed, including rare wines from my personal collection that would be shipped for the occasion. Later that afternoon, I asked for a moment alone with Amanda, suggesting a walk in Central Park. Away from the Harringtons and Veronica, I hoped we might connect more authentically. Are you happy with all these arrangements? I asked, as we strolled past the lake. Of course, she said quickly. Everything is exactly what I always wanted. I remembered a teenaged Amanda telling Marie she wanted a wedding someday in our backyard with twinkle lights in the trees. I wondered if she remembered that conversation. I just want to make sure this feels like your wedding, not just an event the Harringtons are orchestrating, I said carefully. Amanda stopped walking and turned to me. Dad, this is my world now. The connections from this wedding will set up our future. Jeffrey's family knows everyone who matters in New York. And what about the people who matter to you? I noticed most of your childhood friends aren't on the guest list. Her expression tightened. They wouldn't fit in with this crowd. It would be awkward for everyone. I see, I said, though what I saw saddened me. Have you thought about incorporating anything of your mother's into the ceremony? Her necklace, perhaps, or her favorite flowers? Something flickered across Amanda's face, a momentary softening. I thought about it, but the aesthetic we are going for is very specific. Maybe I could carry something small of hers? It was a small concession, but felt like an opening. She would have loved to be part of your day, Amanda. I know, she said quietly. then immediately changed the subject back to logistics about my travel arrangements for the wedding weekend. In the months that followed, I maintained two parallel tracks of wedding involvement. On the surface, I played the role Amanda expected, the father of modest means, who required careful management. Behind the scenes, I made arrangements that no one but the vendors knew about, paying for significant upgrades and additions to ensure Amanda's day would be perfect, regardless of whether she knew the source. I worked directly with the wedding planner when Amanda was busy, explaining my situation and requesting absolute discretion. Veronica was professional, but couldn't hide her confusion about the duality of my involvement. "Mr. Williams," she said during one private call, "just to confirm, you want to upgrade the floral arrangements from 20,000 to 50,000, but you don't want Miss Williams or the Harringtons to know." "That's correct," I confirmed. "Just tell them you found a way to get more for the original budget." This pattern repeated with the photographer, the band, the menu, the favors. By my estimation, I had quietly contributed over $200,000 to the wedding, beyond the rehearsal dinner, all without Amanda's knowledge. 3 weeks before the wedding, the final planning dinner took place at an exclusive restaurant in Manhattan. The Harringtons had expanded the dinner to include some family members visiting from Europe, turning what should have been a practical discussion into another social showcase. I arrived in the same navy suit I had worn for business meetings for years. Well made, but nothing special. Amanda's slight wince when she saw me spoke volumes. Throughout dinner, I was seated at the far end of the table, separated from the core conversation about final wedding details. Jeffrey's uncle, a banking executive from London, ended up beside me and made minimal effort at conversation. "Amanda tells us you were in electronics or something similar?" "Something like that," I confirmed with a smile, not bothering to elaborate on the technologies my investments had helped develop, some of which were probably in the phones everyone at the table used daily. "Tough business," he commented. "All that manufacturing going overseas now. Not much left for American companies." I nodded politely, letting him believe whatever simplified narrative made sense to him. Later, I overheard Beatrice talking to Amanda near the restrooms, unaware of my approach. "Darling, about your father's attire for the wedding," she was saying. "Perhaps Jeffrey could have his tailor see him tomorrow? We could consider it our gift. Nothing extravagant, just something appropriate for the occasion." Amanda's reply stabbed at my heart. "I know, it's embarrassing. He thinks that suit is perfectly fine because no one in Minnesota knows any better. I'll talk to him." I quietly retreated before they saw me, returning to my seat with a new understanding of how my daughter now perceived me. That night in my hotel room, I opened my laptop and looked at the video file containing Marie's wedding message. I hadn't viewed it since she recorded it, wanting to preserve its impact for the intended moment. Now, I wondered if that moment would come sooner than either of us had expected. The Hamptons in late May offered picture-perfect weather for a wedding. The Harrington estate sprawled across 6 acres of manicured lawns ending at a private beach, with the main house a 12,000-square-foot testament to old money and meticulous upkeep. I arrived the day before for the rehearsal dinner, which went as smoothly as expected, though several guests expressed surprise at the exceptional wine selection. Wedding day dawned clear and mild. I spent the morning walking alone on the beach, thinking about Marie and how she should have been there. I carried her wedding photo in my jacket pocket, a small connection to her presence. By early afternoon, the estate had transformed into a festival of luxury, with staff everywhere attending to details. Florists arranged garden roses and peonies worth thousands of dollars. Lighting technicians positioned custom fixtures, and caterers prepared serving stations for the cocktail hour. I was directed to a small guest house to dress, deliberately separated from the main preparation areas where Amanda was getting ready with her bridesmaids and the Harrington women. My room contained a garment bag with a note from Amanda. "Dad, please wear this instead of your suit. It was fitted based on your measurements from last month." Inside was a custom tuxedo from Jeffrey's tailor. I stood looking at it for several long moments, conflicted about what it represented. On one hand, it was a generous gesture. On the other, It symbolized Amanda's rejection of who I was and her need to remake me into something that fit her new narrative. In the end, I put it on, knowing this day was about her happiness, not my pride. At 3:30, a coordinator knocked on my door. "Mr. Williams, we need you at the main house for photos with the bride before the ceremony." I was led to a lavishly decorated suite where Amanda sat at a vanity in her wedding gown, a custom creation that reportedly cost as much as a luxury car. When she turned to see me, something genuine broke through her carefully constructed exterior. "Dad," she said softly, standing to embrace me. For just a moment, she was my little girl again, and I felt Marie in the space between us. "You look beautiful," I told her, my voice thick with emotion. "Your mother would have been so proud to see you today." A flash of vulnerability crossed her face, but before she could respond, the wedding planner burst in with urgent concerns about the flower girl's basket. The moment evaporated, replaced by the efficient management of wedding day chaos. The professional photographs proceeded with military precision, each grouping timed to the minute. I stood where directed, smiled when instructed, and watched as Amanda shifted between genuine bride and performative socialite, depending on who was in the frame. As ceremony time approached, we waited in a small antechamber off the garden. Amanda fidgeted with her bouquet, suddenly nervous in a way I hadn't seen since her school presentations as a child. "What if I am making a mistake?" she whispered, surprising me with this moment of doubt. I took her hands in mine. "Do you love him?" "Yes," she said, then qualified. "He is exactly the right person for the life I want." Not the answer I had hoped for, but not my decision to make. "Then trust your judgment. You have always been intelligent and capable, Amanda. I trust you to know what you need." She squeezed my hands, then straightened her shoulders and became the poised bride again. "The dress looks good on you," she said, referring to the tuxedo. "Thank you," I replied simply. The ceremony itself was beautiful in its precision, if somewhat impersonal in its execution. I walked Amanda down the rose-petal-covered aisle, 200 guests watching from gold chairs imported from France specifically for the occasion. When the officiant asked who gives this woman, I responded clearly, "Her mother and I do, including Marie, as we had agreed years before she fell ill." I took my seat in the front row, alone on the bride's side facing the extensive Harrington family contingent opposite. The vows were brief and polished, likely reviewed by the family's public relations consultant. No personal anecdotes, no unexpected emotion, just a perfectly staged production for the society photographers in attendance. At the cocktail hour following the ceremony, I circulated politely, introducing myself as Amanda's father to guests who largely responded with brief acknowledgments before returning to conversations about summer homes and investment opportunities. The contrast between this event and the wedding Marie and I had shared in her parents' backyard could not have been more pronounced. When it came time for the reception, I discovered my seating assignment placed me not at the family table with the Harringtons, but at a table near the back, with distant relatives and business associates, considered too obligatory to exclude, but not important enough to feature prominently. I accepted this positioning without comment, recognizing it as another indication of how Amanda now viewed my place in her life. The dinner service featured 7 courses paired with specific wines. Each played a work of culinary art served by white-gloved staff. At my table, conversation revealed that most guests assumed I was of limited means, with several offering subtle, condescending comments about how impressive it must be to see my daughter marry into such an established family. I smiled and agreed that Amanda had done very well for herself. From my peripheral position, I watched William Harrington approach the microphone for the first speech of the evening. His commanding presence silenced the room immediately. "Distinguished guests, family, friends," he began, his voice projecting confidence and privilege. "Today marks not just the union of 2 young people, but the merging of legacies. The Harrington name has represented excellence in banking for 5 generations. We have advised presidents, financed industries, and shaped the very foundations of this nation's economy. He continued in this vein for several minutes, effectively delivering a comprehensive history of family accomplishments, thinly disguised as a wedding toast. Jeffrey was presented as the crown prince of this dynasty, with Amanda fortunate to have been selected to join their ranks. While we have not had the pleasure of knowing Amanda for very long, William continued, we recognize in her the qualities of adaptability and ambition that complement our family values. We welcome her and look forward to helping her reach heights she likely never imagined possible. The condescension was artfully delivered, but unmistakable. I maintained a pleasant expression, remembering that my daughter's happiness was what mattered today, not my reaction to implied insults. Several more speeches followed, each reinforcing the narrative of the Harrington family's importance and Amanda's good fortune. No one from Amanda's side was invited to speak, until finally, the microphone was passed to the bride herself. Amanda stood, radiant in her gown, champagne flute in hand. Thank you all for joining us on this perfect day, she began smoothly. First, I want to thank William and Beatrice for welcoming me into your extraordinary family and for making this incredible wedding possible. She continued thanking various people involved in the planning, her college friends, colleagues, and Jeffrey's extended family. I waited patiently for my acknowledgement, expecting perhaps a brief mention of my role as her only parent. I also want to take a moment to reflect on my journey here, Amanda continued, her voice taking on a practiced vulnerability that set off warning signals in my mind. Not everyone has the privilege of growing up in circumstances like the beautiful world we inhabit today. The room quieted further, sensing a touching personal revelation coming. I felt suddenly exposed, aware that whatever Amanda said next would likely involve me directly. Some of you know that I grew up in Minnesota, in very different circumstances than the life Jeffrey and I will build together, she said, looking around the room, but never quite meeting my eyes. My father did his best with what little he had. My stomach tightened at her phrasing and the pitying glances that immediately turned my way. I had to overcome the limitations of my background, Amanda continued, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. While other girls had advantages and opportunities, I watched my father struggle with his modest job, his outdated car, his bargain clothes. Each word landed like a physical blow. This was not acknowledgement, but something much worse. In some ways, she said, raising her glass higher, I am standing here today despite where I came from. I had to reinvent myself completely to create the opportunities that led me to Jeffrey and to all of you. I had to overcome having a father who, despite his good intentions, was ultimately a pathetic failure in providing the life I deserved. The room fell into shocked silence. 180 guests turned to look at me, expressions ranging from embarrassment to morbid curiosity. The Harringtons maintained carefully neutral faces, though I detected the slightest satisfaction in William's eyes. In that frozen moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I reached into my pocket and felt the small USB drive containing Marie's message, the one she had recorded specifically for this day, though surely not for these circumstances. The time had come to honor her final wishes, in a way neither of us could have anticipated. For several heartbeats, I remained perfectly still, absorbing the impact of Amanda's words, while the room held its collective breath. The silence was thick with discomfort, as guests avoided eye contact with me or each other. I could feel the weight of 180 stares, some pitying, some morbidly fascinated by this unexpected drama at an otherwise perfectly orchestrated society wedding. I saw Jeffrey squeeze Amanda's hand supportively, apparently unbothered by her public humiliation of her only parent. His parents maintained their composed expressions, though Beatrice allowed herself a small, satisfied sip of champagne, as if toasting Amanda's final severance from her humble origins. As I stood, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The decision I was making was not driven by anger or even hurt, but by clarity. The path forward suddenly crystallized with perfect certainty. I walked deliberately toward the stage, my footsteps echoing in the continued silence. Amanda's expression shifted from triumph to confusion as she watched my approach. I reached the microphone and gently gestured for her to step aside. She complied automatically, perhaps expecting an emotional outburst or hasty exit. Instead, I adjusted the microphone and addressed the room with the same steady voice I had used in countless business negotiations. Good evening, everyone. For those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I am Cassius Williams, Amanda's father. I paused, making eye contact with various guests. I want to thank you all for sharing this important day with our families. I turned slightly toward Amanda. First, I want to congratulate my daughter and Jeffrey. The celebration today has been beautiful, and I wish you both every happiness. Amanda's expression remained wary, uncertain where I was heading with these conventional remarks. I have listened to many stories today about legacy and success, I continued, shifting my gaze briefly to William Harrington. These are important topics on a day when two people begin building their future together. It seems appropriate, then, to clarify a few things about my own legacy and what it means for Amanda. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Before I do that, I should mention that success can be defined and displayed in different ways. In my case, I chose privacy over exhibition. The modest lifestyle Amanda described was a deliberate choice, not a necessity. Murmurs began rippling through the audience. I continued, my voice remaining conversational rather than defensive. My net worth currently stands at $33 million, I said matter-of-factly. The electronics business Amanda mentioned was actually a series of technology investments that performed quite well, followed by 2 decades of careful portfolio management. The murmurs grew louder. Amanda's face drained of color, while Jeffrey's eyes widened in obvious recalculation. The Harringtons exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their sudden reevaluation of my relevance. I share this not to impress anyone, but to provide context for what comes next. You see, Amanda's mother Marie and I shared a philosophy about wealth, believing that its true value lies in the security it provides and the good it can do, not in its display. We raised Amanda with these values, hoping she would understand that character and kindness matter more than status or possessions. I turned directly to Amanda, whose expression had transformed to one of shock and dawning comprehension. Your mother was the most remarkable woman I have ever known. Before cancer took her from us, she recorded messages for you to watch at significant moments in your life. Your wedding day was especially important to her. I connected my phone to the audio-visual system that had been displaying professional photos throughout the reception. The large screens positioned around the room now showed the frozen image of Marie, seated in our living room, looking directly into the camera. Marie wanted to share some thoughts with you today, I said softly, and with everyone who would be celebrating with you. I pressed play, and suddenly Marie's voice filled the room. Though she had been gone for 11 years, the sound instantly transported me back to our life together. I watched Amanda's hands fly to her mouth in shock at hearing her mother speak. My darling Amanda, Marie began, her face thin from treatment, but her eyes bright with love. If you are watching this, it means 2 wonderful things. You have found someone to share your life with, and your father has kept his promise to deliver these messages. I am so sorry. I cannot be there physically on your wedding day, but know that my love for you transcends even death. Marie smiled warmly before continuing. I have been thinking about what wisdom I can offer you as you begin this new chapter. Marriage is a journey that will test and reward you in equal measure. Choose a partner who sees your true self and loves you not for what you have or what you represent, but for who you are at your core. The room remained utterly silent, guests transfixed by this unexpected presence from beyond. Your father and I built our life on shared values rather than shared possessions, Marie continued. We were fortunate to achieve financial success beyond what either of us expected, but we made a conscious choice about how we would use that blessing. We decided that living simply while helping others quietly would bring more fulfillment than any display of wealth could provide. Marie leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious. By now, you may know about our financial situation. If that has changed how you view your father or your upbringing, I would be deeply disappointed. The man who raised you is the same remarkable person regardless of the number in his bank accounts. His worth has never been measured in dollars, but in his integrity, his compassion, and his unwavering love for you. Amanda was openly crying now, mascara tracing dark lines down her cheeks. Marie's message continued, speaking directly to the values we had tried to instill and expressing hopes for Amanda's future family. Then she addressed an audience she could never have known specifically. To whoever has won my daughter's heart, you are receiving a tremendous gift in Amanda. The girl I knew was compassionate, thoughtful, and grounded in what truly matters. Cherish these qualities in her, and remind her of them if the world ever pulls her toward more superficial values. True wealth is found in how we treat each other, not in what we own or display. Marie's final words were delivered with a gentle smile. Amanda, your father will be sitting there watching this with you. Take his hand now, and remember that while I couldn't give you a lifetime, he has given you everything else, including the space to make your own choices and mistakes. There is no greater love than that. The video ended, and Marie's image froze once more on the screens around the room. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by Amanda's quiet sobbing. Jeffrey stood beside her, his expression unreadable. His parents appeared thoroughly uncomfortable, their carefully constructed narrative of the day completely upended. I disconnected my phone and turned back to the silent room. Thank you all for sharing this day with our family. Please enjoy the rest of the evening. With that, I stepped down from the stage and walked calmly through the center of the reception toward the exit. As I passed Amanda, I paused briefly. Your mother loved you more than anything in this world, I said quietly. As do I. Then I continued walking, not looking back even as I heard her call my name. Some conversations needed to happen, but not here, not as a spectacle for 180 witnesses. Whatever came next between Amanda and me needed to begin with authenticity, something that had been missing for too long. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I walked away from the reception pavilion, the music and conversation gradually fading behind me. I made my way to the beach, removing my jacket and loosening my tie, as the evening breeze from the Atlantic cooled my face. I found a driftwood log and sat watching the waves, giving myself space to process what had just occurred. I had not planned to reveal our financial situation so publicly or dramatically. Marie and I had always been private about our wealth, believing that money often changed how people behaved more than it changed circumstances. But hearing Amanda describe me as a pathetic failure, watching her reject not just our lifestyle but the values that defined us, had forced my hand. My phone began buzzing with texts and calls almost immediately. William Harrington was the first, his message a transparent attempt to salvage a connection. Cassius, we clearly have much to discuss about potential family investment opportunities. Perhaps breakfast tomorrow? Several wedding guests I had barely spoken to suddenly found reasons to reach out with friendly overtures. I silenced the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. These were not the conversations that mattered. After about an hour, I returned to the guest house where my belongings were stored. I changed out of the tuxedo, leaving it carefully hung with a note, thanking Amanda for the gesture but explaining I preferred my own clothes. I packed my bag and called for a car service to take me to my hotel in Southampton, leaving another note with my contact information should Amanda want to reach me. Back at the hotel, I ordered room service and sat by the window overlooking the harbor. I felt no regret for what I had done, but a deep sadness for what had been revealed. The daughter Marie and I raised had been lost somewhere along the way, replaced by someone who measured worth by appearance and status. I hoped that hearing her mother's voice might have cracked that facade, but I had no illusions about instant transformations. The next morning, I checked out early and flew back to Minnesota, leaving the drama of the Hamptons behind. I expected to hear from Amanda quickly, perhaps with anger or accusations, but the days passed in silence. I returned to my routine, managing investments, overseeing the charitable foundation Marie and I had established, and volunteering at the local community center, teaching financial literacy to teens. 2 weeks after the wedding, I made a significant decision. I established the Marie Williams Memorial Foundation with a $20 million endowment focused on cancer research and support for families facing terminal illness. The foundation would provide grants to help patients record messages for their loved ones, inspired by the videos Marie had left for Amanda. The launch received modest local press coverage, exactly as I intended. I also restructured Amanda's trust fund, maintaining her current income but adding conditions to the principal that reflected our family values. Access to larger portions would now be tied to demonstrable community involvement and charitable work, with an independent board evaluating her contributions. It wasn't about controlling her, but about honoring Marie's wishes that our wealth be used thoughtfully. 3 weeks and 2 days after the wedding, my doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon. I opened it to find Amanda standing on the porch, alone, and dressed simply in jeans and a sweater. She looked younger somehow, more like the daughter I remembered from before Marie's illness. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I stepped aside, letting her enter the home she had grown up in, but had visited only briefly in recent years. She walked slowly through the living room, trailing her fingers over familiar furniture, pausing at the family photos still displayed on the mantel. "Would you like some tea?" I asked, falling back on the simple courtesy that had always been part of our family routine. She nodded, and we moved to the kitchen. I put the kettle on and retrieved Marie's favorite teapot from the cabinet. Amanda watched these familiar movements with glistening eyes. "You never changed anything," she observed. "Some things don't need changing," I replied simply. We sat at the kitchen table, where thousands of family meals had been shared, the steaming mugs between us creating a small bridge of normalcy. "Jeffrey and I have postponed our honeymoon," she said eventually. "We are taking some time to reevaluate our relationship." I nodded but didn't press for details. "His parents have called me every day since the wedding," she continued with a humorless laugh. "Suddenly they want to have lunch and discuss family philanthropic initiatives. They invited me to their summer home in Nantucket." "And how does that make you feel?" I asked carefully. "Disgusted," she answered immediately. "With them, but mostly with myself. I can see it all so clearly now, how transparent their sudden interest. Island." She took a shaky breath. "How transparent I became." I reached across the table and took her hand, feeling the familiar shape of her fingers that reminded me so much of Marie. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked, the question that had clearly been consuming her. "About the money, about everything. Why let me believe we were just getting by when you were actually so successful?" I considered my answer carefully. "Your mother and I made that decision together when you were very young. We had seen how money changed people, created false relationships. We wanted you to develop your own identity and values without the distortion wealth can bring. But I had a right to know about my own family," she insisted. "Perhaps," I acknowledged. "We planned to tell you after college, once you had established your own path. After your mother died, I lost sight of many things, including when the right moment might be. Then you seemed to move into a world where money and status were paramount, and I worried that revealing the truth would only accelerate that transition." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. "I wish Mom could have seen what I became. She would have been so disappointed. She would have understood," I said gently. "We all lose our way sometimes." When I heard her voice at the wedding, Amanda said, tears flowing freely now. It was like being split in two. "There was the person I've become, who cared about impressing people like the Harringtons, and then there was the little girl who used to help Mom bake cookies for the homeless shelter. I didn't recognize myself anymore." We talked for hours as the afternoon faded into evening. Amanda shared how she had gradually adopted the values of her college friends, then her New York colleagues, and finally Jeffrey's social circle, each step taking her further from her foundations. She described the emptiness she often felt despite the luxury surrounding her and the constant pressure to maintain appearances. "The worst part," she confessed, "is that I knew what I was doing when I planned that speech. I deliberately threw you under the bus to elevate myself with Jeffrey's family. I convinced myself you would understand it was just for show, just part of fitting in. And now? I asked. Now I don't know who I am anymore, she admitted. Everything I built in New York feels hollow, but I'm not sure I can find my way back to who I was before. You don't have to find your way back, I told her. We can only move forward. Take what you value from your past, leave what doesn't serve you, and build something authentic. Amanda stayed for dinner, and we continued talking late into the night. She slept in her childhood bedroom and spent the next day going through old photo albums and keepsakes she had left behind. We watched another of Marie's recordings together, one intended for Amanda's 30th birthday that I decided was appropriate to share early. Over the following weeks, Amanda divided her time between New York and Minnesota, gradually sorting through the pieces of her life. Her relationship with Jeffrey ultimately ended, the foundation too damaged by mutual recognition of its superficial nature. She took a leave of absence from her marketing job to reassess her career path. When she learned about the Marie Williams Memorial Foundation, she asked to be involved, offering her marketing expertise to help extend its reach. The board welcomed her contribution, but maintained the requirement that she earn her position through demonstrated commitment rather than family connection. She accepted this condition without complaint, understanding its purpose. 6 months after the wedding, that wasn't really a beginning, but rather an ending, Amanda found an apartment in Minneapolis and accepted a position with a firm specializing in nonprofit marketing. We established a new Sunday dinner tradition, sometimes cooking together in my kitchen, other times trying local restaurants that reflected the diverse community. On the anniversary of Marie's passing, we visited her grave together for the first time in many years. As we stood beside the simple headstone, Amanda asked a question that revealed how far she had come in her journey. Do you think she would be proud of me now? I considered this carefully before answering. Your mother never measured pride in accomplishments or appearances. She would be proud of your courage in facing yourself honestly and choosing a more authentic path forward. That kind of bravery would matter more to her than any success or status. Amanda nodded, placing the wildflowers she had picked on the grave. I think I understand that now. The healing between us remains a work in progress. There are still moments of tension when old patterns emerge, times when we must deliberately choose honesty over comfort. The trust broken over years cannot be restored in months, but the foundation is stronger with each authentic conversation. I sometimes wonder what might have happened if Marie had lived, if her steadying presence would have prevented Amanda's detour through the world of appearance over substance. But such speculation serves little purpose. We can only move forward with the understanding we have gained, however painfully it was acquired. If there is wisdom to be found in our story, perhaps it is this. True wealth has little to do with bank accounts or possessions. It is measured in relationships built on honesty, in choices aligned with genuine values, and in the courage to recognize when we have lost our way. Money can provide comfort and security, but it cannot purchase meaning or connection. Those treasures must be earned through how we treat each other and the integrity with which we live each day. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between authenticity and acceptance? Between standing by your values and fitting in with those around you? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to find your way back to what truly matters. Thank you for listening to an old man's reflections. And remember that in the end, how we love each other is the only legacy that truly endures.